In addition to working on correction and helper files, I'm going to be working over the next few weeks to do a series of grammar explanation files so that we can start building a library. And as you want to explore these topics, you can go watch the video, even if it's not something we're covering at that point in class. So I'm going to start first with Haec and Ille. So Haec, Haec, Haec means this, in the plural these. It can also be used for he, she, it, or they. Less likely. We have is, ea, id that fills that role, but it can also be this he, this she, as opposed to that she. And illa is that or those. That's why I'm going to do them together. So hic, haec, haec is this or these. It's also the former, like the former and the latter. And yes, you guessed it, illa is the latter. So, hic, haec, haec. We need a singular and plural column. Just like our nouns, we need nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, ablative. And just like our adjectives, we need a masculine, a feminine, and a neuter. We decline hic, haec, haec in rows. So I do all the nominative singular forms. Then I do all the genitive singular forms. I don't do the column. I don't go hic, huius, huic, honc, hoc. If I learn it that way, I'm going to have to memorize more forms. There's more patterning and similarity between case than gender. So I definitely recommend it by rows. I'm going to write it out and say it as I write it, and then I'll chant it at the end, because that's really how we go from having it in our working memory to deep in our memory, I would say. So hic, haec, hoc. Huius, huius, huius. Huic, huic, huic. Honc, hunk, hoc. Remember, neuter, nominative, and accusative are going to be the same. And then ablative, hoc, hoc, hoc. In the plural, again, masculine, feminine, neuter, same nominative, genitive through ablative. He, high, hike. Horum, harum, horum. His, his, his. Hos, has, hike. His, his, his. So we immediately see patterns, I hope. In the genitive, huius, 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 dative, huic, huic, huic. And then we kind of have that from our first and second declension. We have long O's for the ablative, long A for ablative feminine. In our plural, we see the he and the high. We keep the high sound for neuter, but we still have neuter, nominative, and accusative are the same. Orum, arum, orum, is, os, as, is. The plural is almost identical to first and second declension. Okay, so now I'm going to chant the whole thing and then we'll do Ille. Hic, haec, hoc. Huius, huius, huius. Huic, huic, huic. Honk, honk, hock. Hoc, hoc, hoc. He, hi, hike. Horum, harum, horum. Hees, hees, hees. Hos, has, hike. Hees, hees, hees. Excellent. This, these, the, former. Now let's do Ille, Illa, Illud. This means that, those. It can also, just like in hic, haec, hoc, hit the he, she, it, or they, but it is that boy, that girl, more than issea, id. And it can also mean the latter. Again, we need singular and plural. We need masculine, feminine, neuter. And then we need our nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, and ablative. Again, I'll write out all the pronoun forms. Yeah. And then it can also be used as a modifier, like hic ager, this field. That's why I kind of hemmed, but yes, it's considered a pronoun. Ille, Illa, Illud. Ilius, Ilius, Ilius. Ille, Ille, Ille. Illum, Illam, Illud. Again, that neuter, nominative and accusative. Illo, Illa, Illo. Plural. Illi, Illi, Illa. Illorum, Illarum, Illorum. Illis, Illis, Illis. Illos, Illas, Illa. Illis, Illis, Illis. So again, I'll chant through it. Ille, Illa, Illud. Ilius, Ilius, Ilius. Illi, Illi, Illi. Illum, Illam, Illud. Illo, Illa, Illo. Illi, Illi, Illa. Illorum, Illarum, Illorum. Illis, Illis, Illis. Illos, Illas, Illa. Illis, Illis, Illis. I think I have chanted hic, haec, hoc a lot more in my life than I have Ille, Illa, Illud, in part because Ille, Illa, Illud is more regular. It is more consistent with our first and second declension endings, the notable exceptions being the Illuds for the neuter and the straight Illis for the dative. Remember, we would have seen like Illo, Illi, Illo if it followed first and second. And it goes to the Illi, which I always thought was interesting because we see this ius in the genitive, which feels a lot like a nominative filius. And then we follow up with like the genitive ending. I don't know. I don't know what the pattern historically there is, but Ille, Illa, Illud is a more regular former. Now, I think we have room on this page for is, ea, id, which also can mean that or those. It is much more he, she, and it. But I think it's a good place to put it here, so I'm going to add it too. So we have is, ea, id. It means he, she, I didn't mean to put a parenthesis there, I meant a comma, it, they, but it can also be that or those. So that also sets off Haec, Haec, Haec as a separate category because it does not have that same overlap. So we have singular, plural. We might want to highlight our gender columns there too. Masculine, feminine, neuter. Masculine, feminine, neuter. Then we need our nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, ablative. Okay. Is, ea, id, eios, 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 ei, I lost my U, id, eo, oh, that's an O, that's an O, I promise, an O, an O. Sometimes you'll see I, eorum, eorum, eorum. Oops, long mark over the wrong letter. Orum. Eis could also be iis all the way across. Eis, eos, eas, ea, eis. Oh, trying to put the long mark over those e's today. It is not there. Let me fix it. How cool is that? On my page, it's wrong, but I was able to erase it and fix it in the video. I love this pen more every day. Eis, which could also be eis, eis, eis. As I write out isse, id, and look at the alternative forms that are included here that were not included in my grammar book, the red one that I made when I was in middle school. What I notice is how similar the Ille, Illa, Illud, and the isse, id is, to the point grammatically that I would argue that the isse, id may have formed off of the Ille, Illa, Illud as a conversational shortening of the Ille, Illa, Illud, especially when you look at the e's, the plurals. I just think it's very possible that that u sound went to u to and grammatically, historically, there's support of that kind of a swap. And it's interesting that the shortened version became more he, she, it, they. The longer version, that or those, but both retain both meanings. So now I'm going to chant all of them straight through, beginning to end, and then we'll wrap up the video. So back up at the top. Hic, haec, hac, huius, 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 huic, 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 hunc, hunc, hac, hoc, hac, hoc, he, hi, hac, horum, harum, horum, his, his, hos, has, haec, his. I always think of the Cold Little Duck. I don't know if you read that book as a kid, but it sounds a lot like the rhythm in Cold Little Duck, duck, duck. Ille, illa, illud. Ilias, ilias, ilias. Ili, ili, ili. Alum, alam, alud. Ilo, illa, ilo. Ili, ili, illa. Ilorum, ilarum, ilorum. Elise, elise, elise. Alos, alas, ala. Elise, elise, elise. And then finally, is, ea, id. Singular, is, ea, id. Eus, eus, eus. Ei, ei, ei. Eam, id. Eo, ea, eo. Ei, ei, ea. Eorum, earum, eorum. Eis, eis, eis. Eos, eas, ea. Eis, eis, eis. And that is Hikkaikhak, Ille, Illud, and Isaiah id. Any questions, let me know.